Well, hello everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where in the U.S. or Canada you are. Welcome to this look. This is an introductory look at Church Windows Web and Church Windows Desktop. We're going to be taking a look at the entire Church Windows software package today. My name is Craig Chadwell. I've been with Computer Helper, coming up on a dozen years now, which you'll find to be about the average around here. Whenever you talk with someone here, whether it's in our reception area, support area, you're talking to somebody who's been with the program and knows the program for an average of about a dozen years, which if you've ever gotten any kind of software support, you know that that's pretty unusual and is pretty incredible. We're pretty proud of that, actually. Uh, Church Windows is created by Computer Helper Publishing. We are located here in Columbus, Ohio. The program is sold, supported, and everything from here within North America. So whenever you call for help, you'll be calling here. This webinar is designed for churches who are considering purchasing Church Windows, and we surely hope you do. It's also designed for churches who currently own part of the program but are considering adding a module. So it's not specifically designed if you're currently a church that already uses Church Windows. Love to have you along. Feel free to sit back and get the overview also. But if you have specific questions and you're a current Church Windows church, we would prefer you call support because this webinar moves very quickly to be able to cover all of the features within Church Windows. Two different ways you can get Church Windows. There's Church Windows Desktop, which you install the software, you maintain the backups, you install the updates. It is designed for a single computer or across a network. Now you can access Church Windows Desktop from outside the church, but you'd be using some sort of third-party software like GoToMyPC, PC Anywhere, LogMeIn, or something like that. Church Windows is mainly Windows designed, thus the name, although we do have a number of churches we know are using Church Windows on a Mac. The emulator software these days on Mac does a good job of crossing over. If you have program issues on a Mac, we of course can help you with Church Windows. Installation-wise, we're not quite as able to help you if you have Church Windows Desktop on a Mac. If you're going to be using Church Windows on a Mac or on a number of different formats of devices, we suggest going with our cloud product, which is Church Windows Web. Church Windows Web, the installations are handled for you, the updates are handled for you, the backups are handled for you. Pretty much all you do is log in, take care of your work, print your reports, and log back out. It's great for churches that have a number of different formats or devices. Great on Windows PCs, Macs, iPads, Android tablets. So let's go ahead and jump right into Church Windows. And the first part of the program we're going to look at today is going to be membership. And let me get membership up here. Here we go. The first screen on membership would be your member screen. A whole lot of information. The idea of this screen is that you can see anything you want to see, customizable to your liking, all on one screen, all at one time. Household side here on the left, individual side here on the right. Some nice quick access buttons across the top. We can print a record, print a label, get a map or directions to someone's house. Similar buttons for the individual over here with the additional option to be able to email directly to a person right from this screen. Now under personal information here, these items, they're customizable. You can change in what order they appear. You can change whether they appear or not. You can also change what options appear beneath each item. Like for status here, if I click here, these are the different statuses that have been set up in my sample data here. So active member, out of town member, you would create those as you would want. Now as I mentioned my sample data here, you're going to see some things in my sample data that might look a little odd or sometimes are actually a little comical. One of the first items here in this sample data mentions the health record being current or expired. I'm guessing this sample data was set up ideally for a church that might have a daycare center or a church school or somewhere where they're tracking, well, a health record. So pardon the odd things you might see within this sample data today. Some other quick access buttons here at the top. We can see what groups and classes a person is a part of, what skills and interests they might have. We love those data entry people. Great help for us always. Um, Notes, comments about the individual. Also an individual alternate address. And there could be a family photo. A lot of times in a larger congregation, just placing a name and a face kind of helps you learn who everybody is. So you can load pictures into church windows just to help you for frame of reference. So that is the membership screen. Now, similarly, there is the visitor database, which looks pretty much identical. You might notice this color here I've set to kind of a dark gray. That's in case I come in, as I say, pre-caffeinated some morning and didn't notice I clicked on visitor and didn't notice when I got to the screen that it says visitor, 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 and visitor. I might notice that the color is different and therefore wouldn't go looking for the pastor, say, on the visitor side of the database. Now, if you have somebody in the visitor database, you can still track the skills and interests, groups and classes, all of those things. And hey, if somebody happens to join, we can very easily transfer the individual into the member file, or we can transfer the whole family over. Now, if you transfer someone, everything goes with them. Their birth date, their anniversary, their phone number, their email address, their attendance information, any money they've given through donations, everything transfers over into the member database. So you'd never have to re-enter things again. Let's see, under attendance entry, it's designed so that you can teach a volunteer in a very short amount of time exactly how to get the attendance in. Pretty much all we do is tell the system what group or class or event we're dealing with. We'll go with good old Sunday morning worship here, sure. Give it a date. And we can put in a quick head count, a quick cash count. Now these aren't related to anything. They're just for tracking purposes if you want. And from that point, we just click. Who's here, who's here, who's here, who's here. A couple of these other columns are optional. If you happen to track excused absences, probably more applicable to classes than to Sunday morning worship, I would think. But you see there's a column here that says communion. Hello, Lutheran churches. Those Lutheran churches that need to track for their annual reporting those who have given, attended, and communed. Well, there we go. You've got a way to track that. We can also track comments about the particular service, general meeting notes. Congregational meeting held during service today. There's a Presbyterian reference for us. Bible lessons that we've studied, or any kind of factors that might have affected attendance, whether it was good or bad. So very quick and easy to get the info in, and you can teach a volunteer in a very short amount of time. We're going to come back to reports. So I'm going to jump into visits here. Now, visits, we're talking about individuals or groups within the church who go outside of the church to to minister or to counsel people in need. When we add information for a visit, we can customize, of course, the date that somebody was visited, who went out and did the visiting, why a person was visited. You can set all these up, customize them, where a person was visited, and we can also add a follow-up date and comments so that we can come back to it later. The follow-up date is great. Coming up here the middle of the month, we can print out a report for the pastor. Hey, here are the people you said you'd still get to in November, so get on out there, preach, would ya? Now, this visitation information, let's face it, it's pretty sensitive material. You don't want anyone to just have access to it. You can set up a password to allow different people, different levels of access to get not just into church windows, but you can give them access to different areas of the program. I'm going to take a quick aside out of membership here and come under system administration over to security, and we'll take a look at how the flexibility is there with security. Now, I just gave them a password, a pretty unsecured one-letter password, but a password to get into the program. From there, I can limit what they can do in membership, schedule, or donations and accounting. If this person should maybe not have access to visits, I can click and give them that. If maybe you want them to have access to membership but not to be able to actually make changes, we can set them to read only for membership. Maybe just a sensitive as visitation information is when we're dealing with people's money. So on the donation side, there is a very tight audit trail. We protect the church's money by keeping track of who enters what, who changes what. Deletions cannot just be made. Checks just can't disappear. It's all tracked through a very tight audit trail. But depending on how your office flow goes, you could use security to control. Maybe one person does the donation entry, and someone else comes back, double checks it later, and does the posting. Or maybe you want the entry person to only be able to enter by envelope number if you choose to use them. It's optional. Maybe enter only by envelope number but not be able to see people's names. Or maybe do the entry but not be able to see how much people pledge also. So you can control that through security. Accounting, very similarly. Checks can't just disappear. Payments can't randomly go out without us knowing to whom they were made. So we're definitely, this is church fund accounting with a tight audit trail, and the security part of Church Windows definitely helps keep it all together. He helps allow people into the portions of the program where they need access, yet keep them out of parts of the program they don't need access to. So, all right, back under membership here. One Call Now is a Church Windows partner. They are an optional service, and it is a service, so it does cost money, but they are integrated with Church Windows. They're a separate company. If you need to get out emails, texts, and or phone calls to people in large quantity, One Call Now is an optional service that can help you get that done. Maybe meeting reminders, hey, don't forget to bring your Bible study to tomorrow night. Council meeting coming up, event cancellation, any kind of message you need to get out to people. One Call Now is a service that can get that out as text, phone call, or email as you indicate for each person. And it's very quick and easy to use, and obviously is tied into Church Windows, so it'll automatically read the phone numbers, names, email addresses, those types of things from within membership. A couple other things to mention here. Certain times of the year when it's time to bump the school grades forward, bump groups and classes forward, we would not expect you to do that one by one. There's a way to do it with a couple quick clicks. And CAS certification. Our customers, they're churches. We are trying to save you as much money as possible every way we can. So you can definitely get your database CAS certified. So if you qualify for any type of postal discounts, you definitely can get those and save every penny. All right, the last part of membership is a pretty big part, but reports, lists and labels. For lists and labels, let's suffice it to say about any criteria that someone would ask you for, regardless of whether or not you understand the reason. A lot of times we don't. We get asked for odd requests within the church office. We understand. You can get them a list or a label of whatever they're asking for. Random exaggerated example would be if somebody asks you for a list of every female between the ages of 23 and 73 whose birth date is in November, who has not attended in the last month, but who has given in the last 6 months. You could get that report. So just about any criteria somebody asks you for, you can get it through a list or a label. Directory, we've got a couple pre-formatted options for you that still have some flexibility to them beneath this options button. We can very easily control things like, do we want to automatically capitalize the last name? Do we want to include the work phone? I know a lot of churches wouldn't, but if you want to. How many columns, spaces between families. Here I've got this set to include the email address of basically, we'll say the parents of the household. As I mentioned, the parents of the household, I should mention, Church Windows is fully capable for both directory and for general reporting purposes of handling blended families. Families with different last names within the same household. It definitely can handle it. So on this directory, we can also add, let's add something for the children. How about the birthday? There we go. We'll add birth date for children only to this sample directory we're creating. Now this is what the multi-column directory looks like, and here it is. Don't miss it. It's easy and quick to create. Click And we're done. Um, here's a good example of someone that's got a lot of information here in the middle. We've got the name, address, children's name. We said to include work phone numbers. We said to include email addresses. We've got child's birth date. So you get the idea. Also over here, Miss Allen here has an alternate address, so we know where to send her mailings between January and April as she's set. So real quick and easy to create that directory. The horizontal directory is the same information, it's just laid out horizontally. So it just goes across the page instead of up and down. For the text file, if your church is creating a photo directory and maybe you've got an outside company, Olin Mills or Life Touch, maybe doing this, those companies are completely familiar with the Church Windows text export file. You just a couple quick clicks, email them off a file, they import it on their side, add their magic to it, send it back, and presto, you've got your photo directory. If none of those options work, there is a custom directory option where you can lay out every field exactly the way you want it to look. We've got last name, we've got a comma in there, the first name. We can add the word and if there's someone else in the household, otherwise not. Address, city, state. You notice here on this heading of family email, somebody has set it to a nice bright green. You control the font size, and yes, even the font color. So if I go and look at the preview of this fancy custom directory, you'll notice that family email heading is in a nice bright green. So a lot of flexibility and control. Sometimes not sure if we'd really want to do some of the things you can, but hey, the power is there. So let's go back under the reports. What else do we have? A couple quick lists here. Birth date list, getting ready to do the December newsletter. Hey, who's got a birth date in December? Who's a part of which group or which part classes? Skills and interests. We need some of those data entry people. Who's volunteered to be an usher? Those types of things. Attendance. Once you've got the attendance in, of course, you can get the attendance back out. So we have a summary by person. How have individuals been attending? Summary group of event group. How has a particular event been attended? Attendance worksheet is great for a multi-week course. You can hand a sheet to the instructor at the beginning of the course. They check it off as they go, hand it back to you at the end, and you can see maybe if somebody has to attend a certain number of times to progress to the next level, you would know based on that attendance worksheet. Reports and visits. We said once you get that visitation information in, we can definitely get it back out. If we want to say who did we follow up with, who did we say that the senior pastor would follow up with in November at the hospital for illness. That's starting to sound like the game of Clue here, I know. But once you've got the visitation information in, you can definitely print a report to get whatever you want back out of it. Last part of membership, blank data entry form. When somebody joins the church, we're very happy about that, but we want to make sure we get their information into the computer correctly. Blank data entry form, you pick exactly what fields you'd like to request of that person, and go ahead and print this off for them. And hey, would you mind taking a couple minutes filling this out? We want to make sure we've got everybody's name spelled correctly, want to make sure that we're getting mailings and emailings off to the right place. So that, my friends, covers the membership part of Church Windows. Had a question here about combining the email list with amount pledged. Yeah, you can combine. You can definitely merge merge information between donations and membership. You can definitely get campaign information tied into to get a mailing with, of course, reporting from amount given to date. Actually, we're going to cover that as we come up here into donations. When you look at donations, there's you notice it looks a little bit different. In the middle here, there is our image map. It's items that you would access commonly. Much like Microsoft Windows, there are a number of different ways you can access the same thing in Church Windows. So here where I have Manage Givers, if I come up here and click on Givers, here's Manage Givers, goes to the same place. Browse Donations, if I come under Donations, here's Browse. So we're going to go across. We're going to go through these at the top after we jump right into the big button, the big one. Let's keep track of the money. Let's get the money into the system. And I always give our programming team great kudos for many of the screens actually within Church Windows, but this donation entry process, they've really streamlined it, given it a lot of power, um, but just made it easy to handle. So we'll give the system a date, and we've got a batch code here that's optional to use if you want to track maybe an early service and a late service separately, yet post them to deposit them together. A batch code will help you do that. If you don't want to bother with it, you don't want to keystroke past it every time, there's this little light switch. When I hover over it, it should say skip this field. There we go. And if I click on it, you'll see it grays out, and I don't have to key past it every time. I'm going to turn off donation comments here also. And I said key past it. This process is designed mainly to be used with the 10 key that's off to usually the right, unless you're left-handed, then it can be off to the left of your keyboard. You don't have to do what I call the keyboard ballet, bouncing back and forth between the mouse and the keypad and the keyboard. You don't have to bounce back and forth. Most everything you can do with the 10 key off to the right. If your church does any kind of distribution according to pledge, you can definitely set that up. Or maybe if you're a mission-based church and 10% of all your giving goes off to missions, you can have the system break that apart automatically for you. We can look at a person's pledging and giving information. We can keep this window open as we enter. So if you enter to a different account for pledgers versus non-pledgers, you can see that information at a quick glance. I'm going to leave this open for the first entry, and let's just start typing any part of an envelope number if you use them, or any part of the person's name. I'm going to type 15. Here we go. Thank you. Thank you, Byron Arnold. And here's that information I was talking about. We can see that this person has pledged. So if we would enter it to a different account, we would know to do that. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this. I just want to leave that up for one moment to show how that works. Thank you, Byron, for your $25 check, number 1259, of which you intended $15 to go to the general fund, and $10 I'm just going to arrow down to the building fund. And at that point, to add it to the batch, this part at the bottom, I can either click this button, I can hit Control plus, or I can hit End. A whole lot of flexibility. I'm going to hit Control plus, and it pops down below. And you'll see my check and cash total is going to start updating down here as I enter people. Guessing I might have a Smith in the database. SM Bill Smith, thank you very much for your $20 good old cash. We like cash. To the general fund, and also to flowers. I type FL, it pops up immediately. You see how quick and easy this goes. Somebody's name, WR, I don't know. How about TH? There we go. Robert Altoff, that works. Thank you. I'm going to make this a bigger donation and break it apart greatly. $60 check, of which $10 to the general fund, $10 to the building fund, $10 to the, let's go, organ. Do I have an organ fund? Yes, great. $10 to the organ fund, $10 to crop walk, $10 to, oh, let's pick something good here. Let's see. Flowers, have we done building? Yes. Missions, there we go. $10 to missions. And our last $10 to something fun. I think down here I've got, yes, to noodle making equipment, right. And we pop that down. Now the reason I broke that down, you saw our check and cash total updated, but I can now see each of these entries. I can see how the breakdown went. I can also now over here see the breakdown by account. I can see exactly how much was given to each account. Really, really helpful when you get to the end to make sure it balances with your sheet or spreadsheet or whatever you've got to make sure all of your numbers are right before you post them, or before you post them and transfer them over to accounting. This, of course, being an integrated package. Donations is reading names for membership. Donations also has the ability to post totals over directly into accounting. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of that entry process. Sure, we'll save it. Why not? We're just going to go through these items one at a time. Donations and browse. Once you've got the information in, you can look at it. You can print a report on it. You can export it, whatever you want. This is all the entry for 2013 so far. If I need to make a correction, I can. If I had a check come back, I can mark it as NSF. If this $50 to maintenance, maybe it should have actually gone to our noodle making equipment. Um, let's see, there it is. We can make that correction, and when we save it, the system's going to tell us, hey, I made a quick reversal. This is part of the audit trail, so the system knows what happened. Money can't just disappear. If this is too much to look at, we're looking for something specific. We've got our filter and sort here. We can say, for example, let's limit this to all giving to the building fund given between January and March. I'm going to push my luck here because this is sample data, for dollar amounts between $100 and between $425. Let's see if we got anything. Okay, got a few people here, yeah. So this is all of our people who gave to the building fund between January and March for dollar amounts between $100 and $425. Now I can print this as a report if I'm being asked for it. Also on all print previews throughout the program, we could also, maybe somebody said, hey, could you email this to me? Sure, I can right here on the program, PDF, and email it off to someone. Could you export that as an Excel spreadsheet? Sure, I can export that directly to Excel also. So a number of different ways you can, aside from printing, that you can handle the information as you are asked for it. Talked about these items. Transferring to accounting, talked about this being an integrated software. We'll look at the setup of that on the accounting side. If your church does any kind of electronic giving, you can import those electronic giving files directly from any of these vendors. We're already set up for them. Plus, we've got the ability to import a generic text file or spreadsheet right into the program. If somebody maybe enters it somewhere else and then you want to bring it into the program, no problem, you can do that. I think I might have a sample Venco file out on my desktop possibly. There we go, import. I'm just showing you how easy it is to bring in. Once they send you a file, here I've got a file with a few different entries. I can pick the 20th here and say I've already done the setup. We'll presume that I've told the system, hey, for these giving accounts, here's what Vanco identifies them at. For these givers within my church, here's the customer number Vanco has given them. They don't have all of your information. They just give a separate identifier. And at that point, we say create donations. Double check it. Post batch. It's a non-Sunday date. It's letting me know. That's fine, sure. And there we did it. We brought a file in and posted donations. Very quick and easy to import your electronic giving into Church Windows. Let's go under accounts and pledges. Of course, we can set up accounts. We can change the order of them. This is really handy. When we're doing the entry process, you notice I was arrowing down some to find accounts. If you would like to have maybe for Thanksgiving offering, bump that to the top here in a couple weeks. Leave that at the top for one specific Sunday while you get a lot of the Thanksgiving offering in. Then you can bump it back down again when you're done. So just a way to be very convenient. Now, if your church tracks pledges, it is optional. Some do, some don't. Church Windows definitely can handle that. Here's my general fund 2013, and it's my sample data. Only a few people pledge, but it gives you the idea here that we're basically tracking how much somebody promised to give, how often, starting when, and ending when. And this ending when is great for building fund campaigns that are multi-year campaigns. If you've got somebody that joined the church in the middle of the year and decided to pledge, we can have their start date not be the beginning of the year so that the math computes correctly. Also, if somebody needed to increase or decrease their pledge during the year, Church Windows will definitely keep that tracking correct. Let's look at managed givers here for a moment. One important thing to note on here, of course, this is the person's information. We can have address info that reads over from membership, but we do track in donations. You do have the ability to track classes and to have family givers. So if anyone within the household gives and you've got them set up as a family giver, it ends up going out on one unified statement. Transferring donations if we need to move money from one person to another, maybe from a deceased spouse to a surviving spouse, or if a household is split apart, we can decide who gets the credit for what monies. Managing numbers, we can change numbers at any point during the year. If somebody loses their envelope number box, very easy to assign them a new number and move on. At the end of the year, when it's time to kind of compress those numbers, fill in the gaps, auto assign number will help you do that with a couple quick clicks. Our donations reports. Log reports, just a listing of the entries for a day with a nice little detail to it. Giving summary, just the totals given to each account. And the deposit slip you can choose to have unified with accounting if you have money that came into both on the same day, or you can create a separate deposit slip. Basically, it's a list of checks and the cash amount. Our compare and analyze button here, you see it's got apples on a scale. We're doing some comparisons, so a lot of it has to do with pledging. Pledge giving analysis. How are people giving compared to how they pledged to give? Campaign comparison. Hey, how's the building fund doing this year compared to last year? Giving comparison. How are individuals giving going this year compared to last year? And then the step report for different levels or tiers or steps that you create, you can get a count. The system will give you a count of how many people give between that range, maybe between 100 and 249, then 250 to 499, 500 to 749. Gives you an idea of how much people are giving in what different ranges as you create them. Lists and labels. We can get a quick list of our account balances, how much was given to each account. List of giver numbers. As you saw during the entry process, you can just start typing any part of any person's name or number and it'll come up. But if somebody wants a paper copy of the giver numbers with names right next to them when they enter, there it is. And printing off our labels for the ever popular envelope number boxes or for any other reason you might need them. Very easy to do. One of those other parts of the program that I give the programming team great credit for is this donation statement process. When it starts out, you very easily can customize your statement exactly the way you want it to. I hit the statement designer button, and to lay out the fields the way I want my statement, all I do is move them around. If somebody bought some weird envelopes and the address should be over here to the right, that's fine. I separated my non-tax deductible from tax deductible giving. Those are optional fields. I'm just making a sample here. If we want the church logo to appear over here, sure, that's fine. We can get a quick preview of what the statement will look like with some sample data auto-populated as you would see it on an actual statement. Rearrange it as we want and save it, which I'm not going to for this example. But now, as we go through the donation statement process, with one run through this process, you can print and or email statements to everyone as they request, or it could be both. Think about how much money the church can save if we can get people used to getting a PDF in their email. It's got the magic number they need of how much they gave on it. If they need to print it out, print it out. But there's no mailing, no paper costs, no envelope costs. Great savings to the church to get people used to getting it in the email. If they don't have an email address, system lets us know. If there's a problem with the email address, system again will let us know. And from this screen, we can print a quick set of labels also. But as we go through this process, we choose not only how the statement's going to look and how the person is going to receive their statement, but we choose who, the different givers, who do we want to include this run through the process. Now we can do multiple runs through this process if we want. We can include maybe only those who have pledged. Maybe they get a different message on their statement than those who have not pledged. What accounts we want included on the statements, in what order they're printed, and a couple other options. If you are a pledging church but you don't like the use of the word pledge, if you would rather have a promise or something else, you can change those headings really quickly. Now, sending out a potential few hundred emails right out of your church's email client, Outlook or whatever it might be, can often look to internet service providers like you're sending out spam. So to avoid that, Church Windows is smart, and it will connect directly to your internet service provider's email server. to send it out directly through them rather than through your email software. What that does is it still sends as you. Your internet service provider still recognizes it as you, but you have a much better chance of all of the statements being received by the individuals and not reporting as spam. My friends, that covers our donations part of the program. And as you've seen, we're moving through the hour and have to keep moving quickly. If you do have questions, feel free to type them in. I'll try to cover them. Or there's also the option later, if you want to email me later or ask them or type them in at the end. No problem at all. But I have switched to accounting here, and you'll see it looks very similar to donations. Entering income here, the majority of your income is going to come in through donations, but if you happen to have parking lot rental, if you have a college nearby, like in Columbus here, we have that one really big one of 56,000 students, where all the local churches get 10 to 15 bucks per car on the weekends to allow people to park for the football games. So parking lot rental came to mind, but sanctuary rental for weddings. Maybe you have a rental property also that money comes in from. You can enter the income separately from donations if you want. These next three buttons, they work together, but they can work separately also, depending on how your office flow goes. You might have somebody who enters the bills on the day they arrive. Maybe someone else later in the month says, okay, these are the ones that we can go ahead and pay now. Maybe just for separation of duties, somebody else actually physically prints the checks. So those could be three separate tasks. Now, if this is one person in your church office, we know there are many church offices like that, where it's one person running it all. The system will walk you through that. You don't have to go in and click three separate buttons. We would never expect that out of you. We're going to go through these just the same way we went through donations. Transactions, browse. Browse here is very similar to the way browse was in donations. We can make a correction, we can make a reversal, we can export the information, we can print, we can limit what we're looking at, we can limit what columns we're looking at. Also, it is very similar browse to what was in donations. Very powerful, very easy to use. These items are the buttons below. We talked about transfer, switching money from checking to savings, switching money from the general fund to the memorial fund. No problem. Very, very easy to do in Church Windows. Accounts receivable and accounts payable. Church Windows handles them both. We can create statements, send out statements, record bill payments that have been received, keep track of what amounts are still owed, all of those things, accounts receivable and accounts payable. A lot of churches with church schools or daycare centers use this. And you can also custom create your statements with your logo or however you want, very, very similarly to the way the donation statements are. We said for transferring donations, we said from the donation side, we can send the donations over into accounting. We can also do what I call pull. We can pull the donations totals over into accounting. Once you set it up one time, you'll recognize even though we're in accounting, this column in blue, these are all of our different accounts that we saw over on the donation side. Here's our noodle making equipment. We tell the system one time, hey, for all of these items in donations, when they come over into accounting, we want it to go into this checking or savings account. You tell it what asset account. A lot of times it's the same one. And we want it normally to go into this income account. Sometimes it might be a prepaid item, which Church Windows can definitely handle. For certain denominations where you might bring in money and you don't want it to show as actual income to the conference, there's my Methodist church reference for the session. Crop walk is an example here where instead of going into an income account, I can tell by this first number in the account number, which account numbers are optional to use, I can tell that this crop walk is going directly into a liability account. So it would go into and back out of a liability account. Therefore, it never touches income, never touches expense, yet it is completely traceable. It doesn't affect the budget items at all, so it acts as a pass-through. Another special example, I think we have further down here in youth trip payments. There we go. youth trip payments, this is going directly into an expense account. So if the church has already outlaid the money for a youth trip, and some parents are able to reimburse all or part of their child's cost, we can have what they give go directly toward the expense. So what it does is it reduces the budget item. It acts as an offset to the expense that was originally incurred by the church. But it's real easy to set up and real easy to bring those batch totals over from donation side into accounting. A couple other miscellaneous transactions you can do. If the the printer eats a check and you're not going to use that check number anymore, we can enter it as a spoiled check so we know that a check didn't just magically walk away. Asset adjustment. Most churches don't track fixed assets, but you definitely can. If we need to make a correction to the building value or stock value and investment account value, we can do that. The majority of the churches that use accounting also use Church Windows Payroll, which we'll talk about next. But if you need to if you do any kind of manual payroll entry, or if you use an outside payroll service, you can get those figures in here, get those totals in here. Most every transaction you do in accounting, you can do using enter bills or enter income. But if you want to do a good old-fashioned debit and credit journal entry, here it is. As we look at accounts, I said earlier it's optional whether or not you want to use account numbers. It is completely your choice. Here is the chart of accounts. Now this is fund accounting. So our account types are asset, liability, fund balance, income, and expense. You'll notice on this chart of accounts we've got subtotals set up nice and neatly. Our accounts payable accounts are all neatly nestled between under one specific heading for ease of access. But we can still control what's going to print on the check for our different vendors also. A lot of control, a lot of flexibility here in the chart of accounts. Subtotals are great, very easy to set up. We see the little pluses where we can expand here beneath total salaries and benefits. I've got total pastor salaries and benefits. Let's add another subtotal there. Let's say we're going to add total music staff salaries. We'll put that beneath there. I'm going to intentionally put a subtotal in the wrong place and show you how easy it is to move it. Let's add a new subtotal of total administrative. I had to pick an easy word to spell, didn't I? Salaries. So you see, I would rather this total administrative salaries I just put be beneath as part of total salaries and benefits. And I can just move it up so that it then falls in. There we go. And is one of the subtotals that is a part of total salaries and benefits. That way you can pick the level of detail you want on many of your reports. For budget, if your church does track a budget, you definitely can track it within Church Windows, and this budget projection tool is a very handy item. If we want to forecast the future year's budget based on last year's either budget or actual, we can do it with this tool. I always like a wishful thinking projection. Let's say that next year we anticipate our income to increase by 28% of last year's actual income. It could happen. Our expenses are going to go down, by the way, by 13% of last year's budget. And we all know this is very wishful thinking. I don't think it's likely, but the projected budget column here, it will change once I click on View Projected based on my very wishful thinking here. Here, watch the numbers change. Here they go. So here we go. Here's next year's projected budget. I can now present that back to the committee. They might say, hey, we want you to tweak these couple numbers, but the majority of them, yeah, that looks good. Let's stick with wishful thinking. Okay, let's do that. So now budgeting is very easy and easy to keep track of. There's a whole lot of reporting in Church Windows accounting, as you might imagine. Beneath financial here, these are the three main reports that most churches give out to their committees on a monthly basis. Balance sheet, assets equals liabilities plus fund balance. Fund activity report for each fund, for each group of money that we track. Here's where it started for the month. Here's what came in. Here's what went out. Here's where we ended up. The treasurer's report, if this were business, that'd be your profit loss, but of course we're talking nonprofit, so we're just talking about a comparison of incomes and expenses with budget. I'm going to pick, let's say, January. I can tell the system what columns I'd like to include. Let's go ahead and include the percentage of budget year-to-date figure in there. We can bump that up and down depending on where we'd like to see that in our report. The level of detail of our subtotals we wanted, we were talking about that earlier when I set up all those different subtotals for salaries and benefits. And of course, some of the committees want this in a nice big font, or a particular font, or a particular color. You can control all of that also. I'm going to go ahead and click print. We'll get a preview of this treasurer's report. Now, because it's got a lot of columns, a lot of times you want to print it landscape. And if you have a lot of columns included, you want to print it legal landscape. You need that extra stretch space. But you'll see here's our activity for the period, monthly budget, year to date. Here's a percentage budget year to date column that we added. So you can see how quick and easy it is to create these reports. And like we mentioned earlier, you can print this. We can email this off as a PDF to the committee, maybe in advance of Friday night's meeting. We can export this in an Excel spreadsheet if somebody wants to work with it that way. So very quick and easy, and great reporting. Couple transaction reports, pretty self-explanatory. Check register, deposit slip, general ledger, transaction journal, just a raw listing of transactions, print invoices and statements. We talked earlier about accounts receivable and accounts payable. Accounts payable report and accounts receivable reports. Who owes us? Who do we still owe? List chart of accounts, trial balance, budget reports. We can print checks, and of course, for our vendors, Church Windows will definitely handle your 1099s and 1096s. Now, Payroll handles the majority of the tax reporting, but out of accounting, you can definitely get your 1099s printed for everyone. One more part of accounting before we move on to payroll, and that is the ever popular, never popular, bank reconciliation. Always a fun task. We start a new one here. Our system's going to ask us for those 4 boxes that you always see on your statement. I'm going to use some simplified numbers here, and you see the little red bouncing ball up there telling me your numbers don't match, mister. Let's see, I'm going to do some quick math here. I think that should leave me $50. Did that work? Yeah. And we go to next. Any kind of fees we incurred, any kind of interest we earned. Once we got that in, we go to next. And we just click the deposits that cleared. We're trying to get this difference to reconcile down to 0. And then we go with the withdrawals. And we're just trying to get that difference to reconcile down to 0. And if it doesn't quite get to 0, I'm going to get it close. There we go. If it doesn't quite get to 0, and we can't figure out exactly why, there's a little wizard built in here. You see the button with the little white flag? It's not actually giving up. It's actually just a call for help. Once you click on that button, these 4 tabs across the top will expand and will become multiple tabs. And the system will kind of lead you through a deposit comparison maybe to see where the discrepancy is. Or is the problem in withdrawal line items? It's just a very handy built-in wizard that will walk you through the potential problems that might be keeping your difference to reconcile in bank reconciliation from being 0. All right, my friends, that covers accounting. Let's jump right into payroll. Well, with payroll, there's a little bit involved in the setup, but from that point forward, it is an extremely streamlined process. We're gathering information, of course, initially about the people, name, address, whether they're paid hourly, salary, how often, weekly, bi-weekly, semi-monthly, their hours worked, their pay rate, any kind of accrued vacation or sick time, we'll get that entered. Alternate address, when they were hired, what their position is, when they were fired. There's some good info. Here comes something important. Banking information for EFT. Yes, my friends. Church Windows does do a direct deposit directly to your employees' checking accounts if desired. We have so much confidence in Church Windows Payroll, we actually use it ourselves here. My check is direct deposited out of a copy of Church Windows Payroll that our CFO uses to track our payroll within the company here. So we do a lot of work for you in Church Windows Payroll. We track the federal taxes and update the tax tables routinely, both for U.S., Canada, all U.S. states and Canadian provinces. It is a lot of work, but we do it for you. So whenever you get a service release, you want to always make sure you install it quickly, or if you've got Church Windows Web, it's done for you automatically. Ding. But you'll always have the most current tax tables for federal and state loaded. Now, of course, you can change if you've got additional exemptions or withholdings by percent or by dollar. You can change that also, both for federal and for state. For local taxes, we couldn't possibly keep up with all of them, but with a couple quick clicks, you can definitely get those your local taxes entered. Any kind of deductions that might come out of a person's pay, health, dental, 401k, cafeteria plans, anything like that, we know how to take those out. For allowances, anything added back in, cell phone, car, housing, all of those things can definitely be added back in. Now, this is, of course, church payroll software, so there is minister box here. We definitely know how to handle minister self-employment tax, and for that matter, we know how to handle the many, many, many different ways that churches opt to pay their pastors, or that pastors request to be paid by their churches. I'm going to actually go through a payroll process. I can't do a direct deposit into all of your accounts today. I'm very sorry for that, but we can go through the process. It's very quick and easy. I'm going to pay today. We could pay a specific person. We could pay the hourly people, the salary people, the monthly people. Today I'm paying everybody, feeling generous today. I go to step 3 and I can check everybody's numbers, make sure their allowances are set correctly, and deductions. I go to next. System asks me what reports I'd like for it to print, and I've got one more chance here under Browse Payments to double check everybody's figures. I go to next. Do I want to create that EFT file? Yes. Do I want to print checks for those who are getting paper checks? Yes. Do I want to go ahead and transfer to accounting? Yes. Am I ready to post? Yes. And it's done. That was the payroll posting process, my friends. If you've ever seen anybody do payroll manually where they're working through the books of if somebody makes more than this amount but less than this amount, all the charts and graphs, you know that the process I just went through is much, much simpler. Now, I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and it's going to try to walk me through the EFT process. As I said, I apologize. I can't make direct deposits for everybody today. But I want to go one step further in this to show you what the checks would look like. What we do around here for those who are getting electronic payment is we just print this off on regular payment, on regular paper. If somebody's getting a paper check, the system would print it next, and it would be in this exact format: stub, check, stub. Usually the church keeps one of the stubs, gives the employee the check and stub. But you can see the totals and how it's laid out. It would show somebody their vacation accrued and how much they've used, sick time accrued and used if you have that, any kind of deductions and allowances withheld, what the federal taxes, Social Security, all of those things. So you see it's a really nice layout, really easy to read, and you just hand these to those who are getting an electronic check, and they know the exact amount, the net pay, to expect to be deposited into their pay. And here I do have to cancel out. Like I said, I can't move forward anymore in this process. But a couple other things in payroll we want to look at under reports. Electronic filing. We are partnered with Nelco. You can do quarterly filings or any filings electronically through them. And we mentioned that accounting handles some of the basic tax reportings. This is the full list of all of the tax reports handled by Church Windows Payroll. We've said that we try to save you money whenever you can. When you go to print a W-2, print it on regular old paper. Church Windows fills in all the boxes, the lines, and the numbers. If there's a form that the government requires, their full color copy, I think 1096 is one of those, we're set up just so that you use the form available at any local office supply store. You don't have to go anywhere fancy to get any fancy forms for 1096s. All right, next part of the program, we're moving right along here, is Scheduler. It is a small but mighty and powerful part of the program. Tracks the comings and the goings on within the church. As you can see here, here's kind of the activity for the week. Wednesday night, we've got the gym occupied by youth basketball, and they need basketballs for youth basketball. Our little circle here says this is a recurring event. Sunday morning worship is a recurring event. We can glance at this by day, by week, by month. We can see what's going on. Looks like second Saturday of the month is the pancake breakfast. We can see what locations that you set up, you customize these, are occupied. We can see what equipment is being used, what equipment's already spoken for down here. Our basketball's already spoken for. And we can make sure that a person is not double booked. Yes, the pastor's often spoken for in multiple places, so we can let he or she know ahead of time that has got to be in two places at once. A lot of people use Scheduler for volunteer tracking, so make sure we've got enough ushers for Sunday morning. The other popular usage of Scheduler is here, where you can export this information in the VCal format, which is the most common Scheduler format available, that you could use it on, say, the Church Windows website. So very small, concise, but powerful part of the program. Works great on one computer or across a network or on Church Windows Web. Once something's entered into here, everybody everywhere can see that they can't book the sanctuary for this Saturday at 2 o'clock because we've got a wedding in there, and that would not be appreciated. To have two weddings in the sanctuary on the same day at the same time. So that is Scheduler, and that is Church Windows. That is the program. Next thing you want to do as you continue to investigate Church Windows is you want to head out to the Church Windows website, churchwindows.com, and you'll see right here on the opening page, request a working trial copy of Church Windows. There's a link right here. When you click on it, we ask for just a little bit of information. If you ever filled out some forms, come on, this is only 5 little boxes or however many. It's not much compared to what I get asked a lot of times for an online form. So just a little bit of info, and you get a 2-week working copy of Church Windows that you can add data into, you can print reports out of, you can do anything and everything you want with Church Windows to make sure it's going to work right for you. Also on the Church Windows website, you can find us on Facebook. We post some good tips. We also have a lot of, we'll let you know when there's other webinars coming up. And also our phone number and support hours are on the website also. So get out there to churchwindows.com, click on that working trial copy of Church Windows. And that wraps it up. That is Church Windows. I thank you very much for your time today. If you have questions, please feel free to email them to me at craig@churchwindows.com. It's C-R-A-I-G, craig@churchwindows.com. You can call the 800 number. I'll be around here for a couple minutes. You can type them in if you'd like, but majority of people just hopefully kept a list of your questions, email them to me. I do thank you very, very much for your time today, and I do hope that eventually you do end up choosing Church Windows. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day.